Hi guys and welcome to episode 6 of Babbling Brummies. Today we're joined by, obviously Chris is the new full-time member of our podcast, and we're joined by a new guest today, which is Mike, who's a massive Watford fan. And today we're going to be talking more about the relegation battle, where we think obviously teams stand, and Mike's going to go into some detail about Watford and how he feels they're going to get on through the next few months.
And it could get quite a bit quite fiery actually. Some strong opinions about some of the teams down there. Jay just had a quick chat with us beforehand about how he feels about Burnley. I'm sure we'll get into that as the podcast goes on. But I'm excited for this one.
Same, I'm buzzing for this. So yeah, let's just open it up really. So go on, Mike, if you want to, talk about how you think Watford have been this season. Any good points, any really bad points you think?
Well, yeah, the really bad point is we're 17th in the table. So I think that's the best place to start at the moment. But I think it's the inconsistency. I think it's really frustrating. It's been topsy-turvy as Watford always have been, and obviously recent COVID stuff. We had an outbreak, and Burnley have, meant to be playing tonight on Tuesday, but they've called it off because of COVID / they've best players at the African Cup of Nations, and then their second best player is he has been sold to Newcastle. So yeah, it's been frustrating, but we've got some more winnable games coming up. And after the draw against Newcastle, even though we needed 3 points, I'm a little bit more hopeful that we can pull through. And we've made some defensive sort of reinforcements with signings, and that's what we need, because you can tell what Ranieri is trying to do, but he just hasn't had the defenders in place to do it. Going forward, absolutely fine, but defensively, shambolic at times.
Well, yeah, there's always that. When teams come up especially, there's always either we attack and score loads, or we defend and, don't score many goals. But you boys in front of goal don't seem to be that much of an issue. It's more them slight errors every so often in every game. There's one or two at there, Mike, and it just seems to cost you a little result here or there.
There is, yeah. We've conceded 37 goals in the league, which I think is like the third or fourth most in the league. Obviously, Norwich, Newcastle conceding the most this season. But on the flip side, we scored 23 goals, and that's generally tends to be the average for sort of the lower part of the table. So, we know where the back of the net is. We've got Emmanuel Dennis, who's 8 goals already this season. We've got Josh King, who's not shy of a Premier League goal in his career. And Ismail Assar, before he got injured, everybody knows what he can do. So, yeah, going for, and let's not forget as well, João Pedro as well. But going forward, as you say, we've been absolutely superb. It's just defensively, it's not quite worked out.
No, I think I fully agree. In your quick opinion, who do you think goes down? If I was to ask you right now.
If you were to ask me right now, it'd obviously have to be the current bottom 3. I don't know whether it would be in that order. I do think the bottom 4, as it is now, will be the bottom 4 this season. I think there's too big a gap. There's a 5-point gap between us in 17th and Everton in 16th. So I think the bottom 4 is the bottom 4 for the rest of this season. But I'm going to be positive. I'm going to say we're going to be the ones that stay up. But I think Norwich will give a real good go at it, because Dean Smith, I know you're a Blue Nose, Jamie, but I think Dean Smith's a brilliant manager for a club like Norwich, and they'll have a right good go at it. So, yeah, we'll stay up, and the bottom 3 will stay as it is.
I did say, after his first game, I turned around and I said to John on the podcast, I said, my issue is, at the start of the season, you'd look at Norwich and go, gone. But now, after a few weeks of Dean, you're kind of going, actually, hang on, where are they getting these results from, And they're doing good. They're doing well. Chris, what do you think? Who do you think's going up? Who do you think's going down?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you're saying about Dennis and his 8 goals. He scored the same amount of goals as Ronaldo and Son. That's the firepower you got, and I can't believe how low you are down on the table. Genuinely, you've got him, you got King, who's waiting for for Dennis to take a day off so that he can get a couple of goals in. But it's just not clicking. I'm not as worried as I was before the Newcastle game. I mean, I bet you sighed a huge sigh of relief when Pedro just got that goal last minute
Yeah.
against the Toon.
Yeah, I mean, it was a sigh of relief, and it was more about bloody time. Like, I will take a draw because obviously it means that we haven't lost. You know, that would have been the 8th game in a row.
Yeah.
But really, it was a poor goal to concede, and we really should be winning those games. So, yeah, it's really a good one. But yeah, I'm more relieved, as you say, than anything to actually come away with something. Because if we'd have lost that, then you know I'd be sitting here now saying, "Are we going down this season?"
Yeah, I think most people would probably agree. Not because they got anything against Watford, but because of the fact that Norwich won their game, and that's just a huge mental thing for them to be able to get a win on the board. Go right, they're at their form. You know, Newcastle have had 2 draws on the bounce. You just had a draw. Like those teams are starting to become scrappy. It's starting to become a bit fighty at the bottom. And I think you're safe. I think you've got enough firepower to. So, like, Norwich is your next game, right?
Yeah.
They're, like, hugely depleted at the back. They don't really have a defence. They just kind of hope the person misses. And you've got some really good goal scorers. So, I think you'll just outscore the bottom 4, bottom 3, really. I'm kind of worried about Everton. I know no one's talking about Everton, but I think with the change in manager and yeah, exactly, yeah. The rumours about that, yeah, was it Project Toffees or something? And yeah, I'd be more worried about Everton than Watford. I know that sounds absolutely outrageous considering the 5-point gap, but I just think Dennis he's just unbelievable. I don't think you can deny him any more points. I think he's just been really unlucky.
I think the thing with Everton, what you got to remember is, they've been on a horrendous run of form. You know, we beat them 5-2 at Goodison Park, and I really didn't see that one coming. And I think the players they've got in that squad are nowhere near worthy being where they are in the table. And I think that any new manager coming in, other than Rafa Benitez, who obviously had a stinker of a time, you know, you're looking at his CV over the years, he's absolutely magnificent. A man that's been rumoured to take over Rafa Benitez is Jose Mourinho, another man whose CV is terrific. But you often find that these managers from yesteryear who were having brilliant sort of careers, the game of football is now catching up with them, so to speak. Jose Mourinho, not the manager that we used to love and know, was brilliant at Chelsea. He's sort of stumbled a bit since Tottenham, Man United. I don't know how he's getting on at Roma. I don't watch enough, but I know enough to know that it's not going all smoothly for him. And I think Rafa Benitez falls under that category now. Unfortunately for him, football's evolved too much and he's not been able to keep up. I think you stick anyone in there that has a little bit of grit and determination about them and will get the players fighting for the badge, and that Everton team will start flying up the table again. I know they've got Big Dunk in charge, in interim charge. If he was to have a few games, I could guarantee that they will pick up points in those games, and we probably won't even think about them come, I don't know, sort of March, February time. So I think they'll have enough about them to stay up. But yeah, it is quite crazy to see Everton down where they are.
I don't think they'll set the league alight, but I definitely see them between 14th and 10th. Like, safely just chilling and flying up.
And I think one of the things you said there about fighting for the badge as well, I think one of the teams down there who's in that at the moment is Newcastle. And I don't know if you saw a few weeks ago, it was Trippier's first game, I think it was, or one of his first games in the FA Cup, when Newcastle lost. And
It's Cambridge,
yeah, and Trippier was there, like, applauding the fans, and most of the team left. And Eddie Howe said after the game about basically how he's disappointed in the players who left after the fans had stuck there through losing to a team 2 leagues below. And I think one of the big problems Newcastle is going to have this season is 90% of their players know that they're not going to be in the plans for next year. And I don't think they will fight for the team as much as the other teams down there. And I think that will be a real struggle. I think it depends who they bring in, because obviously the players they bring in, they see for the next couple of years probably. And they will start, I think, showing what they have. But if they don't bring in quite a few players in January, which they are running out of time at, I can see a lot of these players not really giving their all, because they know that next season they're going to be shipped off to a championship team, or, well, I mean, the quality of players they've got, probably a championship team. And I like what you said about Everton, that they do have quality and they do have players who love the team. I mean, you look at some of their players who've been there for ages, like Seamus Coleman and that.
Michael Keane's still there.
Michael Keane, people like that, they will be fighting. Players who came up from the youth in their teams, they'll be fighting to keep Everton in the league. Yeah. And I personally don't see Everton in too much trouble at all. I think they've got a lot of quality, and I think they'll start to push away when they get a new manager who's not. I mean, we don't know the ins and outs, but it seemed like there's a bit of disruption in the dressing room, especially with like Richarlison, who I don't really like his attitude, but
Richarlison just looks like an egotistical maniac. Like,
yeah, he's very. He seemed like when he got subbed off. I think it was a few games ago when I can't remember who they bring on. Rondon. They brought Rondon on, and he looked like he just threw his toys out the pram when he got subbed off, and he had an awful game that game. So,
yeah, but are you telling me you wouldn't throw your toys out the pram if you got subbed off for Rondon?
Solomon Rondon changed the game that day.
He did, and I would.
It's still Rondon.
But I would if I was playing well. But Richarlison was playing rubbish.
Yeah, he was crap that game.
I could not see him doing anything in that game, and I can understand maybe being frustration, but the way he came off, I don't know what it just didn't go right with me. But I still see Everton staying up. I don't see Leeds or Brentford getting dragged down into it, and I think with Mike, I'm the same. The bottom four are going to be the bottom four, and I think a lot of it depends on Newcastle's business in these last few weeks of the transfer market. If they bring in some decent players, it could be very tight, I think.
But I suppose the other issue with Newcastle, as we've seen many times when teams get a bit of money, you can't just buy 10 players and expect them to play straight away with each other. It just doesn't happen.
Well, you see Fulham, you see Villa.
Yeah, like how many times have we seen this happen now? Like,
but they've got bigger problems as well. I'm going to throw it out there. I don't think Eddie Howe's a good manager. I think he's massively overrated. And that's got nothing to do with my hatred for Bournemouth from all those years ago.
I was saying this to JD. I think he's a one-team manager, because not a lot of people know that when he was at Bournemouth, he actually left after a couple of seasons there.
Went to Burnley.
And did awful.
Yeah.
And then went back to Bournemouth and brought him up. And there's some players who are one-team players. And I honestly think Eddie Howe might be that one-team manager. I don't know if he'll be able to do it elsewhere. Yeah, I agree with that.
I think they've got other problems as well, though. Like, you saw how much they paid for Chris Wood. Like, they paid more than United paid for Ronaldo.
He's
and you
New
just
Zealand's
like,
number 9, mate. You back off. Leave New Zealand's number 9 alone.
No, but
it's outrageous. Outrageous.
How expensive is that?
If you don't
more,
want
more expensive than Ronaldo.
£25 million.
How much did you spend on Emmanuel Dennis?
3.5 million.
That's the price I want. I'll pay that.
I think it would have been a decent signing if that price tag wasn't associated with it. Like if it was 5 to 10 million, he knows how to score in the Premier League. It could be decent, but not for that money.
I think they panicked there, Newcastle. They thought, crap, we need a striker in. Who's available? And they've seen Chris Wood's price tag. They've seen his release clause at 25 million and thought, we're the richest club in the world now. Sorry, send a blank cheque to him. Happy days, we've got the man.
At what point, as any manager though, do you go, right, we're struggling for goals. Let's look at bottom of the league.
I think John summed it up perfectly. I mean, I said this. I thought 25 million is ridiculous for him, considering he's only scored 3 goals this season. But as John said, he generally tends to get around 10, 13 goals a season in the Premier League, which isn't a bad return at all, to be fair.
It's not, but for 25 mil,
absolutely, John, absolutely.
Is there a rumour, and I say is there a rumour because I'm starting it here, but is there a theory then that, you know, they've paid that and they've paid his release clause because they know they're robbing Burnley of their striker as well? So not only are they gaining a bang average striker for way over the odds, they're also removing that key first team player, 90-minute man from Burnley to stick the knife in, so that they definitely go down, so that they definitely don't fight up, because there's only 1 point between them.
And Newcastle know how hard it must be to get a striker at the moment. If
Yeah.
they're going for Chris Wood, they know there's not many strikers available in January.
Do they not have the god tier centre forward that is Ashley Barnes?
He's massively fallen out of favour. I did a podcast the other week with a Burnley fan when the original game was meant to be played a few weeks back, and he was basically he was asking me about Troy Deeney leaving and whatnot, and I says, look, Troy's a legend, and unfortunately, you know, some things have an expiry date, and his time at Watford, it was the right time to leave, etc. Which I'm a massive Troy fan, and I hated him leaving. But if I'm taking my Watford tinted glasses off, it was the right time for both, you know, for both parties. And that Burnley fan actually said that he wishes Ashley Barnes would be like that, which surprises me because I thought he was one of their big hitters, to be honest.
Yeah.
He was always good for a goal, weren't he? There was that time when it would be him and Wood up front, and it would literally be the ultimate kind of just send the ball, route one the life out of it. Where's your 2012 Stoke City Tony Pulis football style? Like, full send, headers, in you go. Like, he's a good player. I don't know. I think it's pretty shameful that they're not going to play him. If they don't play him now, it's disgusting.
I think
They've
it's
got no
hard with a
choice.
club like Burnley, though, because they have very different to every other team in the Prem. They are a team who buy players. Well, other teams probably do this. They buy players to fit Burnley rather than they'll buy superstars. Like, they've got a very certain style. Like, they don't go and splash the cash on a megastar just because it's available. They'll find a player who fits their system. And maybe Sean Dyche just thought at the moment he's not fitting it.
I think this is why I get asked this quite a lot about when Sean Dyche was at Watford, and he obviously led us to our highest finish in the Championship. I think it was 13th, and for Watford at the time, that was brilliant. The Pochos took over in 2012. Their first decision as the owners, they got rid of Sean Dyche after he led us to the highest finish and brought in Gianfranco Zola. And you know, quite a few people have asked me on podcasts that I've been on, you know, do you wish that you kept Dyche? Do you wonder what would happen if you had Dyche? And I think you've just summed it up perfectly there, John. I think he will have a big big say, in the transfers that go on at Burnley, which is very rare for a manager to do so now because of the models of the managers. You're more like head coaches or stuff like that, and directors of football in charge, etc. But I think Dyche is the type of person that his voice won't go missed, not only because it sounds like he eats gravel for breakfast, but also because he's quite an authority figure. So I think you have to look. The reason that they sign, as we would label them, as Brexit footballers, we all joke about, but the reason that he does is I don't think that the foreign lads coming in from Spain to a cold, you know, Lancashire night will take to the style of football that Sean Dyche plays. And I think that's the reason we parted ways with him. We obviously brought in a large influx of loanees from Granada and Udinese at the time, and I think that you put all of them together and you've got this big Englishman Sean Dyche shouting orders. I just don't think it's going to work. So I think that's why they style their sort of recruitment style on the particular footballer that we associate with Burnley.
It's interesting to talk about Brexit footballers and the way that the managers sort of gel, like the old school manager, the old guard of managers, and the way that they used to do it. I remember Cardiff when Neil Warnock, I'd put him and Sean Dyche in a very sort of similar category of manager. He had a bust up with Sol Bamba on the pitch because Sol had enough of Neil Warnock shouting all this stuff at him during the match. And I went to Neil Warnock's first game at home, and he turns around and he's swearing at the left back, and it's like so loud, like louder than the away fans, obviously. And but I think there is an expiry date on the way that works. And I think you see Neil Warnock, obviously he's like my favourite manager of all time, but Neil Warnock's fallen out of favour. Sean Dyche is, I think he's fallen out of favour. I think he's on his way out. I don't think the way that he manages is the way that these players grow up to. And I don't think it's working anymore. Like, if you look at the players they've got, Burnley, like they've got a world class goalkeeper, like an international, like renowned goalkeeper, in Wayne Hennessy, and they just don't use him. But
I was thinking who? I thought they played a bit. I don't. Have they played for England? I'm not sure.
That would be on FIFA, but I don't think it's
No, but so they've got like players like Nick Pope and Aaron Ramsey and like Aaron Lennon, not Ramsey. Oh, I wish. No, they've got these players that can play or that used to be able to play, and yeah, I'm not sure. I think, in my opinion, anyway, Burnley are just holding on to those like relics of players that used to be good, and that aren't like Vidra. Do you know what I mean? Like when was the last time he was good? Yeah, fine. What a player, great. But yeah, exactly right. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they've got it anymore.
When was the last time Burnley had an amazing player? They've always managed. They've done a really good job. Sean Dyche really has done a really good job of pretty much all their years in the Prem, managing to keep them in the Prem without an amazing team, without a team which breaks the bank, without any. I don't think I've ever known Burnley in the Prem. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. Have one standout player like a lot of teams do, especially down at the bottom. You had
not in the Prem, they didn't, but no. I would immediately point to Kieran Trippier in the Champ and Danny Ings in the season that went up. I think this new lad they've brought in as well, Maxwell Cornet, he was linked with us a couple of times. He was a left back in France. He's playing up front now and he's banging in the goals. Obviously, he's at AFCON at the moment, but yeah, you're probably looking back in the Championship for a standout player.
I think definitely. We had a joke about this the other week, didn't we, John? I said, imagine if like a Louis van Gaal took over Burnley. Imagine the culture shift. How long that would take.
I think a change in manager for Burnley would be a crazy thing at the club. Like it would literally be any manager pretty much coming in will be a complete culture shift. And I mean, you look at the bottom four teams at the moment, the ones which a lot of us, I know Chris said Everton might get dragged in as well. Burnley the only one who hasn't changed manager this season, and I think it would be detrimental if they did because of how based around Sean Dyche this team is. But like Watford had a change in manager, Norwich had a change in manager, Newcastle had a change in manager, and yeah, I think I don't see Burnley change their manager while they're in the Premier. I think the only way Sean Dyche leaves is if he chooses to, or they get relegated.
I think if they get relegated, I think if Sean Dyche is looking after his best interests, he has to leave.
Yeah,
like there's teams in Spain like Granada and that would happily take him on, so he'd be right over there.
Take all the English boys over there. Brexit.
I think the other thing is, if you're looking at managers especially, we're entering squeaky bum time for a lot of teams down there, and Sam Allardyce will start to appear out of a cave at some point. Like he's going to jump in to take over someone. I'd be careful, Mike. Like Ranieri starts to get a bit sketchy. You might see Allardyce just jogging over.
I'd have taken him a couple of seasons ago when we got relegated, but we brought in Nigel Pearson at the time. So
I was interested in this, Mike. Were you happy with the manager decision for Ranieri to take over?
Yeah, I think Xisco Munoz did a brilliant job in getting us promoted. It wouldn't be Watford without them asking for the managers on a silver salver, and believe me, there were times when even Xisco Munoz, time Watford was being questioned, and we had some horrendous results. I remember we drew 0-0 at Coventry last season, and actually it was behind closed doors, and it was so bad, like it was shocking. And people were like, right, if we lose the next game, he could well be gone. And we were talking about a manager that had not even had 6 months at the club, and people were like, oh well. There were even fans, and I don't even want to call them fans, but there were even fans that were saying, I will take a loss against Bristol City just so he loses his job because the football's horrendous. And then we went and turned Bristol City 6-0. So and that's when the brilliant run started and we got promoted. But no, look, he deserved his shot at the Premier League. He was massively underqualified. He got special dispensation from the Premier League to manage in the Premier League because he didn't have the current Premier League badges or the
Oh,
coaching
really?
badges to coach in the Premier League, but he was doing them at the time in the background. But at the time of him managing in the Premier League, he didn't actually have the specific qualifications that are needed. Um, he tried in the Premier League. We knew it was going to be massively out of his depth. There was no substance to his game plan whatsoever. I was saying before we started recording, I don't get to go to many games nowadays, but I went to the Leeds game away earlier in the season, and they hadn't won a single game up until they played us, and they beat us 1-0. And it was genuinely like Cisco had said, right, this is a starting 11. Out on the pitch you go, and not told them how to play. There was just nothing to us. So to bring Ranieri in, obviously again another manager who's had great TV, managed some brilliant teams, won the league with Leicester. Yes, he then went to Fulham and didn't do too great. But I think overall, he's a manager that you can see what he's trying to do with the squad. And I think now we've got these defensive reinforcements, as I said earlier, I think we'll start to reap the benefits of having Claudio Ranieri as manager. Hopefully, anyway.
I think, and I've said this a few weeks ago, Michael, and I'll say it again now. Like, if we look at your goal difference, you've lost 13 games this season, but you're only minus 14. It looks to me, and I could be wrong, because obviously I don't watch every Watford game, that you are literally one decision, one moment of idiocy in the team of picking up results every time, and it's that one little moment that the Tinker Man, it will eventually click into place, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think it's frustrating for us because, as you say, at one stage we were the most sporadic team in the Premier League. You know, we lost 5-0 to Liverpool at home in Ranieri's first game, and then we went and beat Everton 5-2, and everyone was like, brilliant, this is a new manager bounce. Liverpool was a free hit. Southampton at home next, a team that were in and around us at the time. Hopefully 5 goals going into this game, and the lads will be buzzing, and we go and lose 1-0 to Southampton at home. So and then we lose to Arsenal 1-0 again. I was at that game luckily, and defensively we were solid, and then after that we go and beat Man United 4-1, and then we lose to Leicester 4-2, and then we have a really good game against Chelsea and lose 2-1. So we were really up and down. Like, we must have been a gambler's nightmare in terms of one week we could be absolutely shocking, and the next week we could go and stick 5 past an Everton side. So it is generally tends to be one moment of stupidity, and unfortunately for us, that one moment of stupidity tends to come with William Chooster-Kong on the pitch, who's really struggled to make the step up. And I got massively slated, like, on my podcast when I called him out after the Leeds game earlier in the season. The amount of comments I got saying that's really unfair about Chooster-Kong and all this, and now everyone else is saying it, and I'm like, see, I told you. But he's currently out at AFCON at the moment.
You're entitled to your opinion as a football fan. Like,
I am, mate. But
you've watched this team for years. I'm not calling you Jose Mourinho, but you look at a player and you can tell straight away. After the first couple of games of the Premier, you go, he's got a mistake in him. He makes me nervous. Probably, you're not saying he's crap. You're just saying we could probably do with upgrading.
And the area you don't want that is centre back.
He's Nigeria's captain, and he as well.
He is, yeah. I don't know how he's blagged that one. But
I mean, he's a YouTube star now as well, so pay his respects, innit?
yeah, exactly.
Oh wow! I think looking at this bottom 4, I don't know if you guys agree, but every team in that bottom 4 has I don't know how the best way to say this. I could argue a reason why they'd stay up, and I mean you have Newcastle, the obvious reason, money, who they're bringing in. Norwich, you see Dean Smith is. I like Dean Smith as a manager, and as we said earlier in the pod, he's starting to bring Norwich together. Burnley, you've got a resilient Burnley side who have always been resilient all their time in the Prem. Very hard. Well, they have been hard to play against, and if they can bring that back and start getting some results, they have the games in hand at the moment. You could argue they, with their expertise in survival, might be able to do it. And then also Watford, who I've always liked Watford. Last few seasons especially, I think they play good football. I love some of the signings they make. So even from a few years ago, was it Delafeu and stuff like that. I just love. Because of stuff like that, I love them, and they have a decent team. They have a very strong, especially attacking, I think, team. Probably the best attacking team out of them 4 teams down there. You can make an argument for each and every one of them. And
I would disagree with Burnley. I think I get exactly what you're saying. Sean Dyche somehow always manages to keep them up, no matter how bad they might have started. But I think this season, they've not looked like showing any fight at all. Like, they went to Manchester United, I think, last season or the season before, and they give them a good game. And, Man U's recent record against Burnley at Old Trafford doesn't tend to be too great. Manchester United won comfortably in a run where they were playing horrendously. And I just think that thing that we associate with Sean Dyche's team, that is what is missing from Burnley at the moment. So I think that they're the only ones that aren't showing any fight. Dean Smith, I think he was unbeaten in the first 3 games at Norwich. We knew that there were going to be a shift in emphasis when he took over, and then they went back to their normal ways. Got hammered by Crystal Palace, lost to Tottenham, I think. So, they lost quite a few games, and everyone was like, okay, Norwich are gone for. They've beaten Everton at the weekend, which is a huge result, regardless of how poorly Everton are doing. They've got us on Friday night. They'll fancy their chances against us.
Big game.
That's a giant
I don't know what their
6
run's
pointer.
looking like after us.
Massive.
Mate, I am not ready for this. The amount of beer that I'm going to need to buy for that game is going to be horrendous. But yeah, I think Norwich. I think other than that, John, I think Norwich. They're going to give it a good go. Dean Smith's not going to go down without a fight. Newcastle. It will be interesting to see how else they can bring in that lad from Sevilla, the centre backs, handed in a transfer request because he wants to go to Newcastle. I forget his name. Is it Diogo Costa?
Douglas Costa.
Douglas Costa.
Douglas Costa
reading
for Sevilla.
before we come on air.
You should know him, mate. He's an absolute unit on FIFA. Yeah.
He's told Sevilla that he wants to join Newcastle.
Oh yeah, that's a great career move. That he's get relegated.
But Newcastle, as you say. But I just think Burnley. I think the one thing that they always have had, they are lacking this season. Like any time I watch them in, they just show no signs of
grit.
Any signs of what's.
I think, I remember quite clearly. It was 3 or 4 years ago. Burnley, you knew Burnley because I'd just literally throw anything in front of a ball to stop it going in, and that's how you knew how Burnley defended. It wasn't classic defending. It wasn't like last ditch tackles. It wasn't like 1-to-1 marking. It was throw yourself in front of a ball and stop the other team from scoring.
Whatever it takes, that ball does not go into that net. It is that was their whole game plan.
I think Jack Tarkowski's been absolutely brilliant, and I think he's been worthy of an England call-up times. And I don't know why I can picture him already in a Leicester shirt. Like, is it a signing that Leicester will make? Like, he's guaranteed to. That has got Leicester written all over it. And I said on this podcast, on a Burnley podcast, he was like, if you could have one realistic sign, who would it be? I said I'd take Tarkowski, thinking he was going to say, I knew you'd say that, everyone. And he goes, I will drop him there for you. And I'm like, what? This guy's been immense. And apparently, he's been absolutely shocking this season. But he's coming up to the end of his contract in the summer. So, mark my words now, he will end up at Leicester.
The last few years, there's been people calling for the England call-ups for him. I remember even like 3 seasons ago, people were saying like he could start for, especially with England's centre-back crisis. I would say probably the weakest part of the England team.
What, Harold Fraud Maguire?
Wow. Yeah.
I will still die on that hill. He's a fraud. I don't care.
We won't go into that here. It might
I'm
be a whole
faster
new
than Harry
podcast.
Maguire. I'll take anyone. 100-metre sprint, I'd beat Maguire in a race. Don't care. He's slow.
That's interesting, though. I think you always have to take the word of fans of the team, because they're the ones who watch this team week in, week out, analyse the play. And like we can watch the highlights of match of the day. We can maybe catch a Burnley game if it's on Sky or BT or something. But when you actually speak to the fans who watch pretty much all the games, or at least the highlights of every single Burnley game, and take a lot of notice, you sort of have to take their word on it, don't you, with stuff like this? So that's really interesting. You said
absolutely. And just think how bored you would have to be to think, I'm actually going to watch the Burnley game.
I was in my head. I was literally just thinking, how painful must 90 minutes of Burnley football be? Like I had to deal with 2008 to 2012 Alex McLeish, and my goodness, I thought that was like a sentence. But and I know he won us the cup, but his football was painful, man. Like,
Yep.
on the note of Burnley, while we're on this subject, do we think they're taking the Michael a wee bit with this old claim COVID?
Yep.
Well, I think a lot of teams are. I think it's probably unfair to say it's just Burnley, because I think Liverpool did it, United have done it, even the big clubs have done it. So I think it's just they saw a loophole. Someone did it first, and then they've all gone, yeah, no, actually, yeah, we got the COVID as well. So can we postpone it?
I think as well, I'm seeing a lot of things on Twitter, and the only reason I know this is I listened to another football podcast. A lot of people are saying, well, they played the FA Cup game, Burnley did against Huddersfield, or a lot of people are saying, hang on a minute, they can play FA Cup games, but they play league games. Now, the interesting thing about that is, it's because of the governing bodies. So the FA states that in the FA Cup, you have to play as long as you have the minimum players, and that's not in, because Premier League you've got to have 13 players. 2 of them have got to have played senior minutes before if they're from the under 23s or something like that. Whereas the FA Cup it doesn't matter if they're under 23s or under 18s. If you have big enough squad to fill using senior squad, under 18s and under 23s, you play that game. And a lot of people are thinking, well, why can't I carry that forward? It's because the Premier League have a different ruling to the FA. So I'm seeing a lot of that at the moment. But I think Chris summed it up perfectly there. You know, it's not just Burnley. As much as Jamie hates them, it'd be unfair to sit
I
here
just
and
think
slag
they
them off
take the
repeatedly.
absolute mick, man. Like, I think you can't sell your striker. You can't sell like one of your only chances of scoring decent goals and having a chance, and then suddenly play the boy who cried wolf and go, oh well, actually no, hang on, we got Watford coming up and they're probably going to batter us, so we can't play. Sorry, no.
But that's what Liverpool did with the AFCON. They just went, oh, Manny and Salah have gone. We actually don't want to play Arsenal, who are in form right now. So can we postpone that? Yeah. Okay, done.
And
so
there's a lot of teams. I mean, a few teams have done, like you said, a few teams have done that. And I think it was Gary Neville's been on a bit of a rant about it this last week, hasn't he? He's like, then he goes, there's been like 40 COVID cases in all the clubs, but there's been like 2 or 3 cancelled games. Like the maths doesn't add up, and that's not just players, that's coaches, or the staff as well. He's like, the maths doesn't add up for these cancelled games. He goes, there's something more, and yeah, it isn't just Burnley, but it is frustrating when it's such a big game in that relegation battle that it is that game like could pull Burnley off the bottom and out of the relegation zone if they won that game.
I mean,
and
look
it's
at
such a big game.
Look at Watford. If Watford go on to, let's say, they beat Burnley now and they've beat Norwich, you're slapping up to 20 points.
They're above Everton.
Yeah, like I think there's. I don't know how true it is. Obviously, they had that game against Tottenham, didn't they? Got called off because of the snow.
yeah.
And did you see there was a picture of Sean Dyche and he had the fattest grin, going like as if to say, "Got away with that one." Like it feels like he's just taking the mick now. Like he's just pulling every card out here. And I think they've got what I like to call Wigan syndrome, where Wigan obviously stayed up for so many seasons and barely fought and got up and stayed up and barely stayed up, and then I think now, like Wigan, their time has come.
But I think, like you look at let's use Liverpool as an example, and ethically it might not be the right thing to do, but for a team who's trying to win the league and trying to catch up with Man City, it's probably the smart thing to do. And like if they find that loophole. And I mean, I don't think there should be a loophole there. And I don't know if I don't like it that teams can do this. But if they're delaying the time so that Mane, Salah, Matip, Keita, all these players can come back, why wouldn't they use that if it's there? Not saying it's the right thing, but why wouldn't they?
I just don't think you're taking the players' consideration into, not you personally, like they are. Because in terms of it will get to a point where it's going to be literally Saturday, Tuesday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, and it's going to kill them.
But wouldn't you?
But that's fine for those big teams because they've got the squads. It's not fine for I more expect it, and this might upset people, but I more allow it from Burnley than Liverpool purely based on the size of the squads. Like Burnley might, like we just spoke about, they don't really have any standout players. They had Josh Brownhill. He's kind of a flop, like the big 10 million flop, but they don't really have anyone like big. Whereas, so if they do lose a few players, that's really costly because they don't have those squads. Whereas Liverpool have 50, 60 players, I'm exaggerating, that are available to them that they should be using.
They got a brilliant youth team, a brilliant youth system, and there's going to be players who have in that youth have been waiting for a moment to shine. They're probably looking ahead to AFCON, going, maybe I'll be able to play. The wingers are out. I'm a winger in this league. Maybe I'll be able to show what I can do. And like, I mean, I'm arguing for it more, just playing like devil's advocate on it. I don't think it's the right thing to do, but I do also see why they're doing it, and I don't think they should. But it's as a business decision. If you want to get higher in the league, I understand they're going to have loads more games come the end of season, but I'm pretty sure Jurgen Klopp will take loads more games with Salah and Mane back in their firing lineup than playing with Minamino, who was awful. I know he scored, but
still awful.
Do you know what I mean? I think he would rather take that risk and do that then. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't like it. I think they need to change it. But also, if they don't change it, teams are going to exploit it.
And how do we know people aren't just lying?
Like
literally saying, I've got COVID.
No, you don't.
I'm feeling a bit ill.
No,
bit of lemon juice.
I think you should, literally, normal water does it, mate. Pour some tap water into an LFT, positive.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's actually weird because you told me that now. I didn't know that before, but I have actually tested positive, so that's me done for 10 days.
Oh, I mean, I was going to say, I really hope my work don't find out on the podcast because I quite use some annual leave. And Mike, you didn't hear that from us. If you just want a couple of days off, mate, just a little.
I've already had it, mate. So
yeah, you can get it Delta this time, though, innit? Do you know what I mean?
Make up a new variant. Oh yeah, make a variant now.
Yeah, it's a Burnley one. It's very infectious.
Yeah, I tell you what, like, got that Dwight McNeil variant, boys. It's over. GG, like.
I'm looking back at the table now. I'm quite surprised at a few of the teams who've made it out of this struggle. I mean, I'm Portsmouth fan, so I'm going to say this one. Southampton looked very weak, and I mean, I was desperate for Newcastle to snap up James Ward-Prowse in the
I think
January window, and I hope he does. I don't think he will, but I'm surprised at how many points they're putting together. I mean, I'm always going to have a negative look at them just because I'm a Portsmouth fan, but I'm surprised they've come out of that scrap because I was not worried for them. I was quite excited, but I thought they were going to be in real trouble this year, and. Look at Brentford as well. We talk about this quite a bit on this podcast. You just don't know which Brentford team's gonna come out. Is it going to be the team who beat Arsenal first game of the season, who sometimes play brilliantly, or is it going to be the Brentford team who have lost 10 of their games this season and quite often look quite weak? But it's for me. There's plenty of other teams I'd rather see down the bottom because out of the 4 teams down there. 3 of them I'd love to stay up. I'd love Watford to stay up. I'd love Norwich to stay up. And personally, I like Burnley. I know Jamie doesn't. But I like the fact that Burnley's this team who don't spend a lot of money. And it shows that teams can stay in the Prem without spending 50 million every transfer market. And I'd rather some of these other teams go down. And it's quite sad that it's looking like it's 3 of these 4 teams who are going to get relegated.
I would love Leeds to go down.
I mean, I wouldn't mind
Leeds to crumble now.
I don't see it.
No,
but I'd love it.
Yeah, we all like Leeds. Wolves as well. I'd love them to go. Can't stand them.
Where are Wolves? In 8th.
Eighth.
They're about to get Kiefer Moore as well, aren't they? So
yeah, they're definitely staying up. But they're a team that just sort of they just spend all their money on the Portuguese team.
Um,
And then Adama.
It worked.
Yeah,
It's
Adama.
working, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
What do you
true.
spend more money on, Portuguese players or baby oil for Adama's arms? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, it's baby oil. You don't ask questions you know the answer to, Jay. Come on. I'm sort of surprised about them. Southampton, I'm surprised about Villa, but obviously, like, you
I'm
know,
not surprised about Villa personally, but no, yeah, I get you.
I'm just disappointed with Villa. Like, disappointed with Coutinho as a human being, if I'm honest. Like, I just thought he had morals. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just sad. Like,
I think it might be good just to coming to an end of this podcast is to look at the other end of the table, and it's good to have Mike here, who's a fan of a Premier League team. Us three, we're Premier League fans, and in general, I watch at least 2 games every week, the full 90 minutes of it. But having a person in who supports a Premier League team, we a lot of
you're gonna stay up.
a lot of people see Man City winning the league, and I see that too. It's quite hard to not see that at the moment. But where do you see the rest of the top 4, and who do you see in that top 4? And maybe throw 5th in there as well.
I mean, to be honest, before Chelsea had a bit of a wobble, I actually thought Chelsea were going to go and win it this year. I just thought that Tuchel has really built something really, really good. But it's not quite worked out. I mean, they're playing tonight. They're currently 1-0 up against Brighton. So, you know, they've sort of fallen off the boil a little bit. But, you know, Man City are 10 points clear with 1 game in hand as well. So that really is scary. But I can see, I think top 4 this year will be Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool. And I think Arsenal. Arsenal will get 4.
Yeah, I agree.
Mikel Arteta has been under the cosh massively, you know, with his time at Arsenal. And my best mate and my boss, he's an Arsenal fan. And we often talk at work about it. And, you know, they've given him time when they could have sacked him. You know, there were plenty of calls for his head last season, but they've stuck with him and they're paying dividends for it now. You know, they've recruited him really well. You know, they're after that young lad from Fiorentina. That sounds like that could be going ahead. Ramsdale's proven to be a brilliant signing.
He's been unbelievable, hasn't he?
Tomasi has been brilliant as well.
Incredible.
You know, a bit of an unsung hero. And Ben White as well, he's been solid. I thought he might flop a bit because of the price tag, but he's been superb as well. So things are clicking for Arsenal. I mean, I was actually at the FA Cup game because I live in Nottingham. One of the lads is a Forest fan. He got us tickets. So I was at Forest against Arsenal, and Arsenal were horrendous, but it was largely a second-string side. So, you know, the back line was anyway. But other than that, they've been absolutely superb. So I can see them getting it.
Yeah.
I think West Ham have slipped up a bit too much recently, and I think their chance for top 4 was last season for me, and they ultimately fell short at the last hurdle again. I think it was the last day. I think we were thinking that meant that West Ham sort of slipped out top 4. 5th, I can Tottenham. And I think Tottenham will make a good fist for 4th. They're not really talked about that much in terms of their fight for the top 4. And like I say, I think they'll fall short of top 4, but I think they'll comfortably get 5th, purely because Antonio Conte, you know, there was, you know, looking at it, the Tottenham job was a bit of a poison chalice at times, but Antonio Conte, I think he's a current manager that, you know, we talked about earlier, managers that have had good CVs, but maybe the game of football is now catching up with them and their ideas aren't as used to be. I think Antonio Conte is superb for football right now. He brings a real winner's mentality, and I think he can get the best out of players. So I think they'll get 5th. And yeah, Man U will miss out on top 5 as well. And I think West Ham, I think they'll miss out in the top 5 as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I say interesting, it's pretty boring that Man City pretty much win it every year now. And the fight for the top 4. But yeah, that would be my top 5.
Again, Man City, a team and I only dislike them with the whole, they were meant to be banned from Europe for 2 years and then appealed it, and they went, yeah, actually, no, you know what, mate, yeah, cool, you've got loads of money, so go for it, mate.
It'll be interesting when Pep leaves, because he's leaving at the end of the contract, isn't he? So it'll be interesting if I mean, because I know people say they got loads of money, and I mean they do have loads of money, but they say that's the reason they're top. But all the teams who are fighting for that top four are spending just as much as Man City. Maybe not on wages. I don't know the wage structures of the teams that well, but they're all spending that much money, and like you have to give. I've been a very big cynic of Pep Guardiola, but he's last couple seasons the consistency he's brought with Man City. That team is just an actual ultimate team. Like every position's got like two players who can do a job just as good as the other person. And like I think, even though it's boring, and I'd love to see someone really challenge him like Liverpool did a couple seasons ago. I think until Pep leaves, I don't think any team's gonna overtake them or even get close to challenging them at the moment.
It's interesting you say that, John, and I want to raise a question to you guys purely based on something I saw on Twitter. He's a Watford fan actually said this, and it got pulled up on BBC 5 Live. He said, "Are Manchester City too boring in the sense of they play football like robots in terms of everything is perfect?" And I mean, I certainly find it boring. You know, Man City, you know how they're going to play, but they're that good, you just can't stop them doing from what they're going to do. So I don't know if that's something that you guys agree with, but I certainly agree that they are probably too boring in terms of the style of play and how good they are at things. But then you could flip that on its head and just say, well, you sit back and you just watch them and you're in awe of them. So, yeah.
Do they play beautiful football a lot of the time? Yeah, and it's lovely football to watch. But it is just a bit meh, innit? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I find myself every time they're playing, I don't care who they're playing. I want the other team to win.
My favourite game watching Man City this season, because quite often they are on TV, and that's the game you watch, really. But one of my favourite games watching them actually was against Arsenal when, for that first half, they were against it. Arsenal were the better team. And even when Arsenal went down to 10 men, and the way at the end they just had to press. They finally got the goal at the end. I didn't want them to. I wanted Arsenal to win. I think they would have won if Martinelli scored that open goal. But it was nice to see them struggling. And it's a really horrible thing to say about a team. It's nice unless they're like your rivals. It was nice to see them struggling. And it was a bit sad that they won at the end. But they were throwing everything at. I don't think really this season or even last season, they've had to throw everything at many games. And I think that's what it is. I think maybe that perfect football it's just too comfortable for them. Like it's like PSG should be in League One. Like there's no team who will ever get close to challenging them really. I know last season there's a team who finished above them and that was amazing. But in the general look of it, no team's ever gonna knock PSG off while they've got that money in there. But yeah, I get what you mean. It's very boring in the fact that you sort of know the result for Man City before the game even starts. They had an average start to the season, a few poor games. But they've still only lost 2 and drawn 2 in this whole season, and without a real striker. I mean, that's incredible, really.
But if you look at the game against Chelsea, so it's very similar to the Arsenal game, John. I watched that game as well. I was great as a neutral just to enjoy it. But they just played Chelsea, and you just get a bit of brilliance from Kevin De Bruyne, and they win 1-0. Like,
was that the game that just happened with that goal from that goal from De Bruyne? Oh my days!
Just back and forth though. Like it was a good game. Like it was a fun game to watch. So I think it might be boring because like they've got a system and they stick to it. But at the end of the day, like if I'm a Man City fan, and you're nervous about every single game because you know how tight it is at the top, and you're playing a Chelsea team who most people think are going to get top 3, and it's a tight game. You haven't got a striker anymore. Aguero's gone. Blah 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 blah. And then Kevin De Bruyne, just like the clouds open, and he takes the ball. He turns right. He pings it. Scores. I don't know how you can say it's boring.
I mean, Kepa should have. It was a Kepa mistake as well. I don't know if you saw that he shifted his weight to the right, but I do get what you mean.
But it's so far out, you're not expecting him to shoot. Like, fine. I don't know. I can't see it being boring if you're winning.
I think what a big thing is in Man City is that teams aren't good enough generally to disrupt their game. Like you said, they've got a system that works, and if it works, they get the wins. And you look at the game against, I'll use Arsenal again as an example because that was a game I saw where that system was disrupted. They weren't able to play like they like to play. They weren't able to control the game like they usually do. And I think it wouldn't be as boring if teams were good enough to do that. And
I think if you're good enough to do an active high press like that, like I think your Liverpools can do it. Like they can. Like obviously, I'm not saying Watford can, but obviously that game when you beat Man United 4-1, like it was all about the up top press, and it worked an absolute treat. Like big, obviously Man City and Man United are two very different kettle of fish. Don't get me wrong, but I mean like when you press in a team. Like Man City, they like having that bit of time on the ball, and I think if you are good enough to press them, I think they can be a little bit disrupted.
That's a good question, Mike. I enjoyed that.
yeah, I did. And it's interesting. Your top 5. We talked about this last. Was it last week we talked about this?
Mate, yeah.
And Chris and Jay both know I'm a big fan of Arsenal this season and the work Arteta's done. That is this young squad. Like there's few experienced players in there, but a relatively young squad overall. I'd assume probably the lowest average age in the Prem, and I love the fact that they stuck with him and it's shining through. And I might be wrong here, but I believe all 3 of us said Arsenal top 4 as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Arsenal's lowest average age is 25, and it is the lowest in the Prem.
Yeah, and that's with like playing Lacazette, who's like over 30, Xhaka. Don't know how old he is now.
Granite red card Xhaka.
Yeah, how many reds is he going to get? Do you know what I mean? But yeah. So and I don't know if we talked about 5th, but I would have probably put Tottenham 5th as well, just because Conte's a born winner.
And they've got the games in hand, haven't they?
The games. I mean, you have to win these games in hand, but Conte, how many has he lost since coming in? I know. Let's leave the Europa Conference League. Let's leave that alone. But apart from that, how many games has he actually lost since coming in? Is it 1, maybe?
Lost
Maybe
is
2?
yeah, I'm not sure. Loss.
I don't
When
know.
was his
I
first
think,
game?
pardon, sorry.
His
When was
first game.
First game.
Oh, I don't know. It's been quite a while now. It's been a few months.
I feel like his first game was a draw.
I know he was the first Tottenham manager to not lose in his first 8 games.
They lost to United 3-0. Was he in then?
No, I think that was the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Their first game was a draw against Everton 0-0, and the only time they've lost is in the Europa Conference League twice and the EFL Cup twice. Other than that, they've won they've either won or drawn a league game since.
And I think with their 3, 4, 5 games in hand and the people above them, they've got. I mean, he's a winner. I think they could challenge for, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got 4th. But I think Arsenal might get it just from the fact that, I mean, I just like Arsenal more. But yeah, I hope they get it.
And also I think Harry Kane's been terrible this season.
Yeah, that's sad. I wanted him to do well, but yeah.
Yeah, you were supporting Spurs last season, weren't you?
I was, but I hated the way that with the Super League when they sacked Mourinho to take the spotlight off the Super League, and I was like, oh, I don't like teams who run like that, and I don't like Levy either.
Can someone, 4 lads here, all football fans, explain to me how, on God's name, did Tottenham get into that that Super League discussion? How did they even appear in it? How did that happen?
That's how.
Yeah.
Harry Kane.
At what point do you sit there as like this massive group and go, right, this is going to be massive financial money, Tottenham Hotspur. Who did that?
Don't forget as well, Jay, they've got a massive stadium as well, which is probably the best football stadium in England. I've not been yet, but the stadium will draw a lot of players in. And as Chris said, Harry Kane, at the time he was a world-class striker, and coming off the back of the Euros campaign where he started poorly, but in the end he managed to rack up, was it 4 or 5 goals in the tournament? So might not have even been that actually, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Enjoyed that.
No, that's true. It's very true. Cool. All right, then I guess we'll leave it there then for this week.
Yeah, it's been great to have you on, Mike.
Yeah,
Thank you
Mike,
so much.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure, man.
No worries. Thanks for having me, man. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
Good man. I hope you stay up.
I think we're all going to be supporting Watford now.
Yeah. Big Watford fans now. Come on, Dennis.
Yeah.
No, we'll be looking out for them results, definitely.
And if not, mate, don't worry. I'll go and protest outside of Burnley's stadium to get them relegated myself. Don't worry, mate. Scumbags. So,
I can count on you, Joe.
no worries, got you, man. Always, you know it. But yeah, guys.
man,
Obviously, follow us on Spotify. Obviously, this will go up on YouTube as well. Thank you so much for the support. And also, if you go onto Spotify and type in "Voice of the Vic," that's where you can find Mike and his mates doing the podcast for Watford. Incredible podcast, really good. Really enjoyable, easy to listen to. Like, I highly recommend it, boys. So, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.